Men, this is about you too. And yes, that's the conversation we're having today on the X and Y Convos. I'm talking to Toyin Akinniyi, who is an international development professional with vast experience working on social justice and governance issues across Africa. She is currently Director Africa at Luminate, where she works to support people to fully participate in civic and political life, to safely challenge power, and to access accurate, trustworthy information. I like to call her my favorite feminist. Toyin Akinniyi is going to be talking to us about building allyship, not adversaries, with men in the fight for gender equality. I'm so excited, elated, elevated. I'm looking for all of the adjectives because we were able to make this happen. I know you had to move a
Right.
lot of things around on your schedule to accommodate the X and Y convos.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here as well. And yeah, look forward to the conversation.
Yep, we're going to dive right in into the deep end. What is it about gender equality, equity, whichever side of that argument you're on, it's fine. What is it about gender equality that gets our hackles up, that makes conversation hard? That it's almost like the minute you hear that battle lines are drawn, everybody's withdrawing to their cantonment or battle settlement, whatever it is. Why?
Conditioning.
Ah,
It's the way that all of us, because we have to take responsibility for what side of the divide. We shouldn't even have a divide for starters, that we're on. But the society plays a huge role in how we all show up, in spaces and how we come into conversations. And gender is such an interesting one because right from when two children are born, a male and a female, um, you start hearing things, and those things form stories. Those things form our belief system, shapes our belief system, and so yeah, we come into those conversations already, um,
yeah. We're
set in our
conditioned to
ways.
kind
Yeah,
of
sort of.
take a position.
And I think it's also, as a society, and when I say this, I don't mean just our country.
Right.
I think as a people, we need to learn how to have conversations,
Right.
healthy conversations, and it doesn't have to be either or, and you don't have to be right or it doesn't have to be right or
Right or
wrong.
wrong. Yeah.
So yeah, I think largely the society has a lot of role and impact on how we perceive things and how we.
It was important that we started from there to say that we acknowledge that, we acknowledge what society has, the acculturation that we all
Mm,
have that has kind of, uh, it was important we started from there because the real conversation is how do we then build bridges? That's because for me, I think my headache is this. Nigeria, if we just take an example of Nigeria, the largest continent, giant of Africa, and all those accolades, women make up, I think at the moment, it's about 49% ish of the
almost
population,
50.
almost 50% of the population. Even from that data alone, it is clear that if we want anything to happen, an equitable society, it can't be just one aspect that is fighting for that. Even from that, just that perspective alone, it's clear that we've got to come together to make this happen. If we then peer back that data and we look at women in decision making positions, women in authority,
Yeah.
the difference is staggering. Today, our okay, state assemblies have just, I mean, newly inaugurated administration, 4.8% representation, and at the federal level, I think they have less than 5% at the federal level, which means that we don't even form a quorum, a quota, or to say, oh, we're pulling something, we've built a park. So clearly, we need to build bridge. We need to engage from the lens of building allies.
Mhm.
But somehow we've not been able to do this. And I'm wondering, who should we be pointing fingers at to say, why are you not doing it well?
Okay, I think all of us, because where we are today is a function of our investments in gender equality or equity, as you
Yeah.
said earlier, depending on what people would like to go with.
Yeah.
Um, so where we are today is a reflection of how much commitment and how committed we have been to several commitments we've made to increasing the representation of women in governance spaces, in politics, and even in leadership more generally. Um, and it is government. When you ask about who should we be asking, it is
Right.
government, it is civil society, it is
Right.
family structures, it
Mhm.
is
My favorite, the
pop
media.
culture. I'm coming there. It is pop culture, it is the entertainment industry, it
Right.
is the leaders of culture, of religion, and all the people that shape perception
Right.
and put out stories there that become narratives.
Right.
So that we have what we have today is didn't just happen
Right.
overnight. And so in working our ways back or forward to
Yeah.
where we should be, we have to engage all the structures and superstructures, right? That
Yeah.
um, sort of threw up what we have to engage with now. So at the level of government, laws, policies,
Right.
and walking the talk. It's not enough to have laws and
Yeah.
have policies that enable women to participate and use their voice. People say have everyone comes to this world with a voice,
Good voice. Yeah.
but giving people the opportunities and the platforms to use, their voice and to have agency.
Right.
It will take a lot of effort and a lot of walking the talk.
Right.
I come to the media as well.
My
Um,
people.
um, so when I talked about pop culture, when
Right.
I talked about religion,
Mhm.
and it is the media that sells to people
Right.
what they should engage with,
Mhm.
how they should engage with those things and
Right.
those structures and those people.
Right.
Um, the conversations on social media today can be a bit depressing to say
I
the
was going to
least.
say alarming, but
Yeah,
depressing quite covers it.
depressing. And you find that who are the people on social media?
Mm.
It is young people.
Right.
And so when you find people who are young at heart and
Right.
presumably progressive, and they say things that sound like we have been set back several years,
Right.
you ask yourself, where are they getting this
Information. Where are they
information
getting this
from?
from? Yeah.
And so that's where the media comes in. The media may be selling false narratives, may in fact not be playing their role enough in
Yeah.
educating people.
Right.
Whichever way, the media has a role to play
Yeah.
in the pictures of women that people see and engage with,
Right.
in how much space they give to how women are portrayed in a negative light.
Yeah.
In Kenya during the elections, of course, in Kenya we have more women in elected offices. But even there, during the campaigns, the conversations on social media, the portrayal of women was negative. And it just shows that the only thing that worked in the favor of this woman was the law. Is the law
That
that
existed.
Kenya,
Yeah.
yeah, has put in place to ensure that there's a quota. Women have to, a certain percent of
Right.
women have to run, have
Okay.
to be in political parties.
Right.
So now there's no
You
you
can't do
have to
anything about
you can't
it.
do anything
Yeah.
about it. But the conversations out there that the media allows to go out there, um, is not good enough. And
Right.
so when I talked about government, here we don't even have a gender quota. So there is no level
Playing
playing
field.
field for
Yeah.
women. They're already disadvantaged. And then when you go into the mainstream, when you go into spaces where women's participation is
Right.
being discussed, it's alarming the kind of takes that you get. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of work needs to be done. Civil
Right.
society also needs to do their work,
Right.
our work, because we're all parts of the civil society,
Yeah.
in informing, in educating the
Yeah.
populace, and in ensuring that um, there is no misinformation, there isn't fake news,
Right.
and there is
And it's not
factual.
combative.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not going up in arms
No, we're not.
against, it's
We're
not
not.
men against women.
And you said you used a word earlier, allyship.
Right.
I have a problem with
Oh,
allyship
okay.
when we talk about,
Yeah.
because then what you communicated, or what people communicate when they talk about men being allies,
Allies, yeah.
um, even that communicates the fact that it is the women's fight.
Mm,
Gender equality is a human
right.
rights issue. So
Right.
men are disadvantaged as much as women are disadvantaged.
When
If we don't
there's
have a society
that
that
makes better sense.
that
That's
is, no, it's not for you. It's
no,
all
no,
of
no. I
us.
mean, yeah, it makes a lot
When
of
we don't have a
sense
society that is reflective of the people in
in
that
that
country,
society, right?
we have 50%. I mean, I'm not a data person, so shoot me if you want. Because 49 point something percent,
Yes.
the math that we were taught
Thought.
says that it is 50%.
Mm.
So if we have 50% women, 50% men, and your public spaces don't look
Don't look like that.
like that, it is a human rights issue. It is an anomaly, and all of us, male and female,
Right.
should address it as an issue, as against a woman's issue.
Okay, so there are two things I want to piggyback off this
Yeah.
current conversation, because there are two things that I want us to talk about. First is that I don't know how else to describe what needs to happen, because we're in a place where gender issues have been specialized. So
Yeah.
it's women's issue. Go and talk about it. Go and figure it out. And we need to facilitate an environment where it's not just a women issue. If for nothing but for the fact that the power brokers today are still men. The
Yeah.
ones who are going to make those decisions today
Mhm.
are still men. If we're going to have a hope of turning that around, then somehow we need to engage constructively differently. I don't know what word to use with men. But the second layer of that is I also know that there's a school of thought in the broad space of feminism, the very broad, many colored feminism space, that there's an argument that even the idea of attempting to collaborate with men kind of says that you need them, and kind of allows them to kind of come into a space and own it. And I'm wondering, okay, how then do we think about this? So first, we do need them. Where we are now to get to equality, we do need them to build the building blocks. But we also don't want it to become, you know how it is. I mean, the picture that comes to my head is you enter into a meeting, there are women, there are men. The women say things, the man says it, and it's like, oh yeah, that now makes sense. And I understand why that saying, oh, we need men as allies, will kind of make women
Yeah.
feel like, you want them to come and own this again. But how else do we then?
So you've answered the question in a way.
Okay.
I think when we approach issues with the intention of finding solutions to the issues,
Right.
and we take out the personalities of those involved,
Involved, yeah.
and what people look like, I think it's easier for us to arrive at the answer. For instance, I always have a problem with all women gatherings that seek to address or having conversations
Around, yeah.
around gender equality. I think we're building a lot of echo chambers,
Mm.
and that's not. I don't
We're
think it's
talking to
helped us.
ourselves.
I don't think it has helped us so much. You said something earlier about the people, for now at least, the people that are making the decisions, the majority,
Yeah.
men.
Men. Yeah.
So why would we not have them in the conversations?
Right.
Also, to the point I made earlier, it is about the issue. It is a human rights issue.
Right.
It is a problem
Mm-hmm.
that should affect anyone in any society. I
Right.
should worry, whatever my gender, that we don't have equal representation
Yeah.
in a society where we have equal number, right,
Right.
of the genders. It's just like what we say about the youth population being more than 70%, I
Yeah.
think.
Yes.
Whereas if you look at our political spaces,
Geriatric.
even leadership across
Forgive me.
sectors, yeah, even across sectors,
Yeah.
that should worry anyone. And so we shouldn't have rooms packed full of young persons trying to
Trying to
talk to
solve that,
themselves, trying to
right?
solve that. So it is bringing different stakeholders, all stakeholders that
Right,
should, that can, move the needle in the
right,
direction that we want the
right,
change. That should be in the spaces, in the rooms, whatever the rooms look like,
right,
virtual or physical.
right.
So that's for me, I think is the first thing that I think. Also, in those spaces, I think we need to have everyone from government. I mean, I said earlier, reeled out all the
All the
people
people,
who
yeah,
up till today have enabled the
where we
system
are.
that we have now.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we should all come back into these spaces and say, what can we
What
do?
can we do? Right,
And when we're in those spaces, we need to allow for different voices
right.
to be heard. And yeah, I mean, people take up spaces, not just
Mm.
men take up spaces that are meant for women.
People, yeah,
People can take up spaces. So it is learning to not take up spaces
right.
when you have different people that need to air their own voices
Their
and
own voices.
opinions. And it is gradual, it is behavior change. Like I said, this
Mm.
is years and years and years of conditioning and false narratives and harmful narratives.
Right.
And so we will not cure it in one meeting or in
Mm.
with one
Yeah.
one big law. But it is understanding that all the decisions we make today will
Right.
have reverberating, effects
Yeah.
years and years after now,
Right.
from now. Yeah.
So, I mean, do we even have examples of this kind of collaborative rethinking of what is good for our society
Mm.
from the gender lens? Do we have any examples, whether it's in small spaces?
Mm.
Because I am learning that, because this is Nigeria, I'm learning that it's important to count even the little wins. It's
Yeah.
important to monitor, evaluate, and record even the little wins. Otherwise, it feels as if, oh, this mammoth is not moving, this behemoth is not moving. Do we have any examples, whether it's locally, whether it's global north, wherever?
Yeah.
Do we have any examples where we're seeing, where we're increasingly seeing this collaborative effort to make a society equitable?
Well, there are examples, transferable
Oh,
examples. These examples might not be examples of where gender laws or gender,
yes.
because even when we have the healthy laws and policies in place, we still find that practices are not
In a line.
necessarily
Yeah.
aligning with those. But we have examples of spaces and efforts that have been collaborative. I mean, elections, for instance,
Right.
we sit together because we want the same thing,
Mm.
and so we listen to one another. We sit together, we fight, but we make up
Yeah.
because we know that we need to get this done. I can't think of one big example, but there are obviously
Yeah.
examples of when we have all come together. Um, we didn't have a child rights law
True.
before in this country. Lagos State, I think, is taking
Yeah.
is the lead in that
They
direction.
have.
We
Yes.
have portals, now following years and years of advocacy by civil society organizations and other stakeholders. We have a sex offenders portal, for
Yeah.
instance, in some states.
Right.
These are efforts, collaborative efforts, and I
Right.
think if we just draw lessons from those,
What made
um,
that work, and how can we
what did
use it
it,
here?
what made it work, and even we can look at societies that have gender equality laws
Mm.
and practices,
Yeah.
and we can learn from them.
Right.
I talked earlier about the gender quota system.
Yeah.
It has worked in Rwanda, it's working in Kenya.
Right.
Those are African countries, because once you say America, then
Yeah, or any
people
of
be
those
like,
places.
people like we are,
We are
their
not
democracy,
American.
exactly. Their democracy is several years more than us.
Yeah.
But these are African countries that we
Yeah.
can learn from. And we borrow a lot from them. We exchange a lot. They also
Yes.
learn from us. So we can see what's working
Right.
in those spaces to advance,
Mm.
women's representation
Right.
in public spaces and in leadership, more generally.
So there's something you have said repeatedly, harmful narratives, and
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because I also find, just in engaging with people, that when I'm describing a narrative that could potentially be harmful,
Mm.
it's almost like a shock sometimes, both to the men and the women. It's almost like a shock, like, but that's not, but
To what
that's not what I mean, or
extent? Yeah.
that's no, that's not. But can you give us examples of this kind of harmful, maybe just one of a harmful narrative that is making it challenging to collaboratively build an equitable society?
Um, there are several narratives, and we also have stories to
Yes.
to yeah in Nigeria. Um, without delving, too much into the role that religion has played
Right.
in upholding certain narratives about how women and men are different and should
Mm.
not be equal. In fact,
Mm.
you know, and we also have statements and
Right.
stories from our cultures, our different
Yes.
cultures, about women being quiet where men
Men
are.
are,
So we
yes.
have those, like some of them are even anecdotes, but they stay,
They stay,
and
right.
the media helps us to amplify them. And pop culture, the
Yeah.
entertainment industry, the creatives, through their own their own efforts, also reinforce some
Yes.
of these narratives. And so I believe that for this, I don't want to say war, for this, for what we want to achieve as well,
Right.
narrative change is very critical. Um, and I believe in having alternative, sorry, like
Yeah.
parallel stories that you can check and say, okay, but this doesn't make
But this,
sense.
yes.
This has to make sense,
Yes.
So we need to work to permeate our airwaves,
With
all the
something
spaces
different.
with
Yeah.
something different and factual and logical, and
Yes.
that is helpful
Mm.
for what we are trying to achieve, which is gender equality. It looks to me like it makes sense,
I
but
mean, yeah.
it looks like it's
I was I,
logical.
I, I was talking to one of the guests, another episode, and I was like, it feels as if you should be doing a ABCs of gender, because it's
Yeah,
so simple. It's not that
it,
hard,
it
but
appears,
yeah,
but when logic, because it's logical, we have 50%, 50%, so we should have
yes,
50%, 50% in
yes,
governance. In this
mm,
one, yeah, it sounds logical, but that logic is contending with years and years
yes,
and multiple years of
mm,
harmful and negative and
narratives, yeah,
opposing
mm,
logic, because
mm,
that's what you've held for several years becomes your logic, it becomes
yes, it
your
does,
reality.
right,
And that's why it looks like, I think that we need to double the
yes,
effort.
right,
We need to increase the amount of positive stories. Just, I think, 2 weeks ago we had the AMVA, the award,
MVS, yeah, yeah,
and there
MVC, yes,
was a yeah there was there was a point where a man said something. It was something misogynistic, and people just laughed. And I caught it, and I found that other people in the comment section caught it,
caught it
and
as
then there
well,
was a lot of back and
back and
forth that
forth,
this is just jokes, and so it is.
yeah,
Yeah, it is those opportunities,
mm,
those platforms that we need to sanitize.
right,
Because the creative industry is really important.
yes,
And so if they can show us what it means for women and
yeah,
men, or for us to have gender equality, then people will understand, okay, this is what it looks
this is
like.
what it looks like,
Because in our churches, in the different religious spaces
right.
that people occupy, we can see what it looks like for women not to take up spaces, and it
Right.
looks like it's okay. So why are we challenging it?
Mm,
And then we watch Nollywood movies, and it looks
same
like, yeah,
thing.
it's not so it's
And all
okay.
the ads.
And so we keep, and the
Can I
ads,
tell you about one
yeah.
annoying ad I saw? I'm not going to mention, but I hope that people can get it. So, they're taking their kids to school. The guy comes out with his wife and the kids. Then, I'm sorry, had the audacity to look at the wife and say, "Why is their uniform not as white as the neighbors?"
I know that ad. We know
What
the
is that?
ads.
And so I feel like it's when you, for instance, my outrage at that kind of advertising, making through all the many processes.
Mm.
When you challenge that, then it makes it feel as if, look, you're just trying to deconstruct something that there's
That
nothing
there's
wrong
no
with.
need to
Yeah, like why
deconstruct.
it's just an ad. And I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes that's where that fight, almost that divide comes in.
Mm.
Like this thing does not matter. And
Yeah.
then the minute you begin to say it matters, it begins to feel as if, you see, that's why we don't talk to you. That's that you see,
Yeah.
that's why this doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I do agree that we need narrative change. We
Yeah.
need
We
we need
do.
a course correction
Yeah.
that says this is bad or this is good, and it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to come together. It's okay to
Yes.
disagree, but disagree safely, or
Mm.
disagree with reason. Disagree
Yeah.
to the point where we can now come to an agreement
Yeah.
for what is better.
Yeah. Absolutely. That, and also just showing the positives,
Mm,
like just showing the positives,
yeah.
because so far I don't think we made so much effort, to paint certain people in certain lights.
Yeah.
It just happens. People
Right.
just pick the anecdote. They just pick, the behaviors, and then they
Yes.
replicate, and then they pass it down.
Yeah.
So I think just having an alternative, and then we will do the work of saying, actually look in this direction. This is
Yeah.
a good portrayal of the girl child.
Yeah.
This is a good portrayal of a woman. Um, yeah, I think so. We need to invest more, and by we, I think it's
Everybody.
everyone.
Yeah.
Those who support such efforts, and are working towards impacting
Mm.
in the space of gender and gender equality. Should invest more, in the narratives that have thrown up and have upheld, this
Status
harmful
quo.
status quo that we
Yeah.
have.
We have to wrap up now. But before we go,
Mm.
I really like to give to dos, to go like, yeah, we've had the conversation, but then what do we do? What can I go out now and do? But not just the individuals, the institutions. What are the to dos that we can take now, both from the activist side and from the people who are, because honestly, I have to agree that there are people who are just thoroughly confused by all of this, and they think, but I don't treat my mom bad. I don't treat my sister bad. Why is this such an issue? So for the activists, for those who don't know, for those who are ambivalent, for those who are combative, what are the to dos if we're going to collaboratively build an equitable society?
First, we need humility.
Hmm.
To we need to appreciate that it is a grave issue that we're dealing with, but it is not um, one that we can't tackle, and we need collaboration, and that's why you need some humility. First, if you don't understand the issues, to try and get educated,
Hmm. Yeah.
and listen, basically. But in terms of the institutions, as much as I would not want to say government, because it is, yeah,
Right.
but government has a huge role to play in providing the enabling environment,
Right.
in as I said earlier, walking the talk,
Yes.
in providing or allowing laws. I mean, laws and
Hmm.
policies that will enable more, um, you know, gender equity or equality, as we say. Civil society leaders and actors also need to, do more.
Right.
We've done a lot already, but I think we need to do more
There's
in
more to
terms of
do.
civic education, in showing people what it means,
Right.
if we do not fix this issue, and how to do it. What does it look like, um, to be committed to and be an agent, of gender equity or gender equality, if you want. The donor community as well, which is my my constituency,
I'm glad you brought it up. It wasn't me.
also
I did bring it up.
also
You brought
need
it up.
to also need to invest,
Yeah.
and others who play a role in supporting the spaces and the advocacy,
Right.
that's ongoing. And also, I think more investment in narrative change, efforts to sanitize and build
Right.
healthier information ecosystems. And
Right.
when I say that, I also charge the media and tech platforms. We
Yes.
need to ensure that the platforms and spaces where people engage and share
Mm.
information and receive information are, are providing
Are themselves
accurate, they
designed
are
to
themselves
even
designed
reflect
exactly to not
quality.
cause harms,
Mm.
but instead, to provide information, accurate
Right.
information, not misleading information,
Mm.
information that can arm people to do the right thing, to take the right decision, and not prioritize gain,
Over, yes.
at the expense of the society. So I think all of these stakeholders,
Yes.
and of course, I can't overemphasize the role of the entertainment industry and those who they have the power, who use their power, who have used their
Right.
power over the years to get us where we are. They should also use that power and that platform, the
Turn it
space that they have,
around.
to help us to see more positive, to see women in more positive light, to give them, roles that show them as empowered individuals,
Yes.
and all the other institutions, cultural institutions, religious institutions. I think everyone needs to collaborate, and
Yes.
what the shape and nature of that collaboration will look like vary, depending on,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. But we do need to, all
There's
hands need
work
to
to be
be on
done.
deck. Yes,
Yes.
basically.
Thank you so much for sharing. I learned so much just listening to you, just rethinking even some of the words that we used to describe what we want to see. And I
Mm,
guess that's where narrative is so powerful
yeah,
and so important. So
yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time to converse with us on the X and Y Convos. It's
Thank you
been
so
such a
much.
pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me, and yeah.